Crosscode has been on my radar to play for years. In fact, my interest in Crosscode predates this very channel, and yet it took this long for me to get around to it. After finally taking the time to play it, I'm very glad that I kept the game on my to-be-played list for as long as it was because I was quite happy with the experience. Crosscode's standout features are great, and although it has its frustrating moments as well, the game's positives significantly outweigh the negatives, especially the story, exploration, and presentation. Crosscode is an action role-playing game with some puzzle aspects similar to The Legend of Zelda. The game was developed by Radical Fish Games and published by Deck 13. The game's development is reported to have begun back in 2012 and gained greater momentum when an Indiegogo campaign came up for it alongside a demo in 2015. The game also came to early access that same year, where it would stay until it was released fully in September of 2018 for PC, Mac, and Linux. The game later received ports to PS4, Switch, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X/S in 2020. Finally, the game received a post-game expansion called A New Home that came out in February of 2021, thus completing the almost decade-long journey of developing Crosscode into the game it is today. The game's reviews on pretty much every platform have been good, and it seems audience reception has mirrored that positivity. With that, let me introduce you to our protagonist and the world of Crosscode. You play as Leah, a player in the VR MMORPG Crossworlds. Leah, unlike most players though, has two challenges to deal with. First challenge, she has a malfunctioned speech module and thus cannot talk. That challenge isn't the biggest one for Leah though, because her biggest challenge is she cannot remember anything about her life, virtual or real, before waking up in the game. Thankfully, upon waking, she is greeted by Sergei Asimov, a talented computer programmer who thinks he can help get her memories back by having her play the game of Crossworlds. He also manages to add some words to her vocabulary, although not many, but it should give her a start to completing the game. However, it seems things won't be as easy as they expect, as Leah is confronted by a mysterious and powerful blue avatar who she only barely manages to escape from by entering the main area of Crossworlds called the Playground. It seems there are forces set against Leah from within Crossworlds, so she'll need to keep a low profile while playing and recovering her memories. The story then follows Leah's journey as she plays through Crossworlds, finding allies, rivals, and many secrets along the way. There's more to Crossworlds than meets the virtual eye. My expectations for the character writing were not high, especially with a main character with limited communication abilities, and yet, the game surpassed my expectations easily. The writing for the game's character was a highlight for the entire game. This applies to the serious moments of consideration and story twists, and also to the lighthearted moments where the characters talk about weird things in Crossworlds or their lives outside the game. The personalities of the main cast melded well together, and the meta inside Crossworlds writing was fun as well. Even the NPC dialogue, which was trying to mirror what you might expect players of an MMORPG to be discussing, was surprisingly fun to read. Finally, Leah might not be able to talk much, but the writing still allows her to have a distinct personality and a lot of heart in her interactions. I underestimated how affecting the story and writing would be for Crosscode, and was very glad that the game surprised me this way. As for story progression, because of the entangled structure of the game's story with the story of the world of Crossworlds, it is a bit convoluted to talk about. While Leah and Sergei's main goal is recovering her memories, the goal in Crossworlds is for the Seekers, the Avatar players, to complete Operation Trackwalker, a challenge set by the Ancients. In order to make progress on the track, as it is called, players need to complete certain dungeons to gain shades that unlock more of the game. 4 of the dungeons grant the player the use of an elemental type in combat and exploration, but I'll get into that more in the gameplay section. Suffice to say, the story of Crossworlds is geared around these seekers completing the track, which for the most part Leah does, only occasionally getting sidetracked. In Crossworlds, in either the dungeons or the various areas you have to walk through in order to get to the next town, enemies are scattered all along the map. Most of them will not be aggressive unless provoked, and if you choose to provoke them, then you'll need to use your amazing action RPG abilities to take them down. Leah is playing as a class called the Spheromancer. This class can shoot projectiles, get up close and do melee hits, use a shield to guard, or dash away during combat. For each one of the shoot, melee, guard, and dash abilities, you can use the large branching skill tree to unlock arts for each move that consume SP to use. Along with the arts, the skill tree also grants many passive abilities. As you progress through the dungeons, you unlock elemental abilities, and you can switch Leah to any one of cold, heat, shock, and wave elements once you have them. Each elemental mode has its own skill tree called a circuit and arts based on the different actions you can take in combat. You need to be careful when fighting in elemental mode though, because you can overheat on elemental power and then you're stuck in neutral elemental mode until you recover. This can be especially dangerous when fighting one of the enemies specifically weak to an elemental type, because now you've lost your greatest advantage against them. As you go around hitting enemies and hopefully damaging them, you will enter a combat state that persists for a little while after defeating the enemies. You can let it run out and then you automatically heal before your next combat and gain the experience you got from the encounter. On the other hand, if you chain combat encounters together, you can build up your combat rank from rank D to rank S. The higher the combat rank, the better items that drop from defeating enemies during the chain, though you cannot automatically heal up, and so you need to use items to heal in those scenarios. Plus, if you die during the chain, you lose all progress you made during that time, including experience and items. These chains aren't easy since most regions have quite a few difficult enemies in them, but doing so is very satisfying in my experience. The regions don't just have enemies to hit though, they also have plants to hit to get materials from. Materials collected from plants and those dropped by enemies can be used in markets to trade for items or construct equipment. You can also purchase basic equipment or items from each town, but if you want higher quality goods, you're going to need to do some item collecting. While combat is certainly fun, one of the things I enjoyed most about each region is what I call the environmental puzzles that usually hide some of the many treasure chests in-game. The game's terrain has many different levels, and Leah has an automatic jump up or down or across from certain levels. So all you have to do is find the path that leads you up and across certain obstacles to receive that sweet treasure at the end. Some of my most triumphant moments in the game came from figuring out exactly how to bounce this projectile off a piece of terrain to hit the switch that held up an obstacle, preventing me from grabbing some new items. There's also so many treasures all around, some of which are very well hidden, that you can consume a lot of time trying to locate and get them all. But thankfully, some of these items are well worth the effort. The main quest, though, will lead you to the dungeons, and this is where the biggest challenge awaits. No, not the enemies, although the standard enemies can be challenging, and the bosses doubly so. Not them, though. I'm talking about the puzzles. The dungeons are full of many puzzles, most of them involving the elemental ability that you'll be granted during the course of the dungeon. Now, as someone who is not experienced in puzzle games, you can take this comment with a grain of salt, but I felt the dungeon puzzles were hit or miss. Granted, the developers specifically stated that they wanted them to be challenging, and that mission was certainly accomplished. For one specific dungeon, though, I think they went from challenging but understandable to, how was I supposed to know I could do that? My struggles with the puzzles aside, I do think that if you enjoy puzzles, these dungeons will be a dream come true. I definitely felt very satisfied when I completed a puzzle without needing to resort to a guide, few though those moments may have been. The combination of elements and the need for precise timing gave the developers a lot of room to try many different kinds of challenges for the player, and they took that and ran with it. Given the difficulty of both the combat and the puzzles, I wouldn't blame you for hesitating at taking on that challenge. Thankfully, the game has several options to help you adjust certain settings to make things more comfortable for you. You can adjust the amount of damage enemies deal, how frequently they attack, and the speed of the puzzles. The puzzle speed is the one that for about half the game I had down to 50% because, as I said before, precise timing is a key part of some of the dungeon puzzles, and I mean very precise. Alongside the main story and quest in Crossworlds, there are numerous side quests given by the Crossworlds NPCs. This covers most of the standard stuff you'd expect from an online RPG involving fetch quests, exploring certain areas, destroying certain enemies, and the like. The experience, money, and items are nice, but you certainly don't have to complete the side quests if you're not feeling like it. You just might have to do some extra grinding in order to make sure you don't fall behind the enemy's levels in the newer regions of the game. I did some side quests, and my most enjoyable part of the quest, apart from completing them and getting the rewards, was seeing Leah's reactions to the quest givers ranging from pride to exasperation. Still, there is a lot of side content in Crosscodes you can complete, from the chests, side quests, encyclopedia entries, and much more. Crosscode is either a completionist's dream or nightmare. Presentation-wise, I like the game's 16-bit art style for the most part. The colors of each region are well put together to give a nice environmental feel, and the sprite work is particularly good. I do think there are occasions where art style takes precedence to gameplay functionality, particularly when trying to figure out the height of certain pieces of terrain while jumping around the map. I wish the developers had highlighted terrain differences better, but it wasn't anything close to a deal breaker for me. The screens and menus can look intimidating at times as well, but I think the information presentation for the game was perfectly understandable once they explained each menu. Given the pixel art style, I was happy to see that the animation in-game had a great amount of versatility and character to it. In addition, the character portraits have a wide range of expressions, none more so than Leah, which is why she was able to have such a distinct personality despite her communication issues. The sound design is very satisfying, and traveling and interacting with enemies and objects, no complaints on that front. And finally, the music is good, a nice blend of tracks that feature more in action moments and those that fit more in character moments and give each region or character a distinct feel. Solid presentation work across the board for CrossCode. CrossCode is a good game on the whole, overcoming its occasional flaws with a lot of smart design towards giving you a great sense of progression both in gameplay and story. The story's emotional tale resonated well with me, and I absolutely adored jumping around the land finding secrets and battling enemies. CrossCode is a solid action RPG that I would recommend to anyone interested in the genre, and especially to those looking for a challenge with both battles and puzzles. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, the best way to show your appreciation is through YouTube engagement, such as likes, comments, and shares. That way I can avoid having my channel knocked off the map by the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to hear more from me in the future, subscribe and ring the bell so you're maybe notified when I upload. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a great day, and happy gaming.